You're listening to Experience This, a show about the emerging experience economy with your host, Tom Young.
Hi, everybody. This is Tom Young. Let's go around the room.
Hey, this is Sean.
Karen.
Hey, we're down here in the studio. Today, we got official notice that our book is ready for print.
Yes.
So we've been
Are
working
you
on this.
excited?
Yeah, I am. It's been a long journey. Going back, I remember sitting in...
Conference room.
No, it was like E301.1 or something.
Those little corner rooms.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm just going to start calling people. That was a while ago. It just took us a lot longer to do this. But anyway, we've got a book coming out. We've been promoting it on the podcast, Digital Labor, The Coming Demise of the White Collar Worker. Anyway, it's going to be available on Amazon and your favorite book retailer, hopefully.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we were going to talk a little bit about today about the book, the experience of writing the book, and then also just the broader concept of experience and books today. And with so much going on in modern media, old school books are they still have a place in society, but probably not what they did at one point.
Yeah. I also feel like we should be interviewing you a little bit on this podcast.
Let's go ahead. Let's do it. You guys ask me questions.
So we started this journey a while back. Did you think it was going to take this long?
No, I didn't. And having done it once, we're not quite through with this journey because we still have like the logistics of how do you get book with Amazon, consignment issues, print on demand,
and then the whole marketing side of
the
it,
marketing
which is still yet to come. Yeah,
and then really the follow up and what happens after this, like speaking engagements and promotions and book tours and signings and things like that. What happens next, I'm not sure. So the journey's not done yet, but up to this point, I would say this was not what I expected, and it was a lot more work than I thought, and it wasn't. The way we did it was probably not efficient.
right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that informed early on my thinking about using a ghostwriter and an editor and the like to help do this had to do with the way that I was writing professional articles at a prior company that I worked for. And I worked with a communications guy. His name was Alex Kozlov. He was really good. So he and I had a good yin and yang.
Mm-hmm.
So I would write an article, and then he would edit it, and it was much better after he edited it because it made better sense. And then we would publish it. And we did a few of those, and we got used to each other's styles. And so then one time he called me in a car, and I was at a while, and he just interviewed me. And then he wrote the article, and then I edited it. And I said, "That's great. Let's do that."
Right.
And so we tried that, and it's harder to do in a book form.
Right.
But for an article, it's one thing. But I would say we have a couple other projects conceived in the pipeline next, I would do it very differently. I think you have to go through and just and go through the effort of writing yourself. And if you can't do that, then don't write it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So and then edit it. I think it's important, to also write an outline so you don't wander around and not have a point to what you're writing.
I think that was one of the biggest things we found was happening was we were becoming repetitive, or that we weren't remembering when we said certain things already in other prior chapters. So it would have helped so much just to have a whole book outline ready where you could easily tell, like, oh, I already had this in chapter 2. I already had this.
We made attempts at that, but it happened.
Just kept changing.
No, it was so long.
Yeah.
And a lot of the content that we were talking about was actually changing as we were writing it.
Right.
So anyway, it's a fun experience.
Were you guys also surprised at how, because we talk a lot about technology, were you surprised at how the process is still a bit analog? Like, were there opportunities where you're like, crap, I'm surprised like this hasn't been automated, or like technology's not really a big factor in people publishing books?
I think, well, there's a lot of entrenched interest. The publishing company we work with while we were working with is actually changing their business model because it's happening very differently. I think Amazon is really disrupting a lot of the publishing industry with print on demand. They have a lot of writing tools out there. They can crowdsource the editing. There's a lot of things you can do now to get content out there. But at some level, it really gets back to, even in the business world, books are still the mainstay. If it's the author of this book, or if you write a white paper of a similar heft, and really interesting concepts, it doesn't have near the gravitas of a book. That's just my experience.
Yeah, somebody was telling me yesterday, I'll have to look up the fact, but there's a lot of people who aspire to be authors, and there's only 3% of people that actually publish books. That's pretty low.
3% of all people?
Of
the aspiring people.
Really?
That want to write a book, yeah. I'm surprised it's even that high.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought it was 3% of the population.
No way.
Okay, so I'm just not connected. So the people who said, I want to write a book, of those, 3%.
Follow through.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it's a lot of work. If you have to really have a passion for it. I mean, at some level, I always knew I was going to do it, but I wasn't going to do it if I didn't have a reason to do it.
Yeah.
And the thing that drove me to do it, frankly, was in the consulting world, when I worked at a large consulting firm, I used to get a significant amount of money in speaking fees.
Right.
And it was tied to the fact that I was with a large consulting firm. When I left and started Rumjog, it tapered off very quickly. And when I went on the speaking circuit and would get invited to conferences and things like that to speak as a keynote speaker or a guest speaker, I bumped into people who were in the same position I was, a small, independent boutique kind of company, but they were getting paid because they wrote a book. And their books are decent; they're pretty good. And I try to at least hold to the same standard of writing a book as good as those guys. But they were out in the speaking tour and they were making decent money pushing their books. The guys that were really the inspiration for this, I would love to be in the same league as them, was the two MIT professors, Andrew McAfee and Eric Brynjolfsson, who wrote the first book they wrote was Race Against the Machine. And they self-published it, and they had a lot of errors, and it was only about 80 or 90 pages. But it was their seminal work around the fact that it's going to be hard for people to compete with machines.
Yeah.
And anyway, it got picked up through their network through MIT, and then eventually 60 Minutes picked it up, and they put them on.
Wow.
And so they got on 60 Minutes, and then for them, after that, it was off to the races. They wrote a book called The Second Machine Age, and I know I've talked to both Andrew and Eric about why they did that, how they did it, and actually we was able to get one of my clients, IPsoft, got Andrew to speak as for one of their product launches in London and New York. So he probably picked up a nice $100,000 for that.
Yeah.
But Andrew got picked up at Davos to speak at Davos. So if you had something really interesting to say, and you make a point, the people will want you to come talk to them. And I think a lot of these things I know from being on these book tours, a lot of people don't read the book. They read an abstract of the book.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the book gives you the gravitas to speak on that topic. So anyway, that was a little bit about what's going on. So
good stuff.
Yeah, so we're going to be in Boston next week with we're going up for a conference with IBM. So we'll bring some books in tow with us and see what the reaction is when I actually physically hand somebody a book. Here's the book. As opposed to saying, I'm writing a book. I'm one of the 97% who is writing a book that never publishes it.
Right.
So, yeah, it feels like it's a big accomplishment to do that. We're having a little bit of a gathering today and doing this show. So this is fun.
Yeah, to say like it was, I almost think of it as like riding a bike, where the first time you do it, it's like challenging and you're like learning how to do it, and then as soon as you do it once, it's like, oh, now I get it. I could do this again now. It'd be way easier.
Yeah,
it's like all these small little things you just, and part of the reason why you're thinking it's analog or it's so complicated is because there are so many new vested interests now. Amazon has their own way of doing things, and they want their own formats, and there's self-publishing Ingram Spark, and you can't put the same book on both of them because there's just rules against that. Like, you have to know all of these things, but once you know them, then it's like, okay, I can do it again.
There's a lot of insider baseball stuff on navigating the publishing world. Yeah, that's been very interesting.
Which is why it's probably, again, that 3%. It's very intimidating sometimes. You know?
Yeah, it is.
This is not even, you know, what's supposed to be the tough part, which is writing the book. You know, it's like all the stuff after that you still have to do.
Well, think about some of the new things that get done, and we're going to attempt to do this. You have to record the book for Audible.
Yeah.
So you can have the book on, you know, listen to it in the car or on tape. I don't even, people don't use tape anymore, but.
Listen to it on tape?
What did I just say? Sorry. Smoke signals.
Yeah.
Books on tape used to be the thing it was called.
Yeah.
It's Audible now.
Right.
And Jason podcasts. So we're probably going to put out a companion series where we'll go through each chapter and have a discussion about it. You know, the blog that goes with the book, so you can have discussions and follow-ups, and some are deeper dives in some of the aspects of it. So, you know, I look at other guys who've written some interesting books, like, you know, authors that I like who have self-published and then became very successful at it, like Tim Ferriss, who wrote The 4-Hour Work Week. He might have wrote that. Jeez, I want to say it could have been 10 years ago.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
Was it a while ago?
Yeah, it's still very relevant. But
he's a very good book.
Yeah.
But then he created the companion digital products that go with it, and he wrote the book in a way that you don't have to read the whole book, so it became a little bit of a reference book. And I've also read a lot of indie authors on Amazon that were promoted through their platform, who've done very well. So guys like Will Hertling, who was an HP consultant, and he started writing stories about, you know, future tech, and he wrote Avogadro Corp and the AI Apocalypse, and then, you know, I think he's written like 5 or 6 books, and then now he's an accomplished author. You get Daniel Suarez is another guy I'd like to read, who's been now picked up by proper publishing houses because they have something really interesting, and those guys go out. I know Suarez goes out and speaks a lot.
Yeah.
So he wrote a book called Demon, Daemon. So it's a programming reference.
Right.
And then he wrote the successor to that called I forget the but anyway, the third book he wrote was called Kill Decision, about drones and giving them autonomous power. Freedom was the second book he wrote. And then he wrote a book called Influx, around, think of Men in Black, but not a comedy.
Wow.
Where it was not so much aliens, but hidden tech, you know, and behind the scenes. It was a lot of really interesting stuff, and people get pulled in. And so, but I read about how because when we started doing this book, I was reading about how other people, like authors, how they do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the one I really liked was Woody Allen. So when Woody Allen creates, he writes from 10 to 2. So no distractions. He's not like double dipping, but he just works from 10 to 2. He sleeps in every day, writes from 10 to 2, then he takes a nap, and then he goes out and hangs out and plays clarinet at the club or does whatever he does. But he's like, I'm living. I'm like, so he works 4 hours a day, and then some days he'll go back and curate what he wrote before, but he's not just sitting there and agonizing over the words. He just starts typing and just go at it.
Yeah, I could imagine for authors, and I mean, you obviously experienced it. It's the process of getting the words on paper is that's it's kind of a challenging thing to do, because some authors, I imagine, agonize over hitting a word count per day, but it seems like he's got a good system of, I'm just going to work from 10 to 2, and
I found that, you know, and you saw it when we were under some deadlines.
Yeah.
I could crank out 5,000-7,000 words in a couple hours, you know, maybe 4 or 5 hours. But I need to be in the zone, and I need to not be screwing around.
Yeah.
I can't be like, you know, reading the Drudge Report on the side or, you know, watching TV, or, you know, I have to be in the focus. So what I would do is, you got to be in a comfortable position, have a nice setup, and I would listen to music or sound effects. So I had no distractions.
Yeah.
So I put noise canceling headphones on and listen to Zen music or listen to ocean waves and just type. And just that's the way to do it. And you've got to be disciplined. But I found that a lot of times I would just sit in front of the monitor and just stare at it, and after 10 or 15 minutes just walk away.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're not in the mood, you can't do it. But the disciplined guys do it. Stephen King, a prolific writer, you know, if 3% of the people actually publish a book, he's in the 0.1% who is, you know, an awesome, accomplished author. But he writes a lot. He has a lot, but he writes, I think, from like 7 a.m. to about 11 every day, and just that's what he does. He sits down, and he just has his routine, and cranks it out. And you have to go do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. Definitely. Which is so a great segue to, I think we were going to probably chat about this is, so now we've got the book.
Yeah.
And as authors, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that go into these books. But on the flip side, are people still reading books?
I think no. I think much less so than they used to be, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
If I don't know if we can get any trend analysis, but
Well, I pulled up something.
yep.
You know, it just looks at this trend from, even if you take like 2015 through 2018. So
This is from Pew Research.
yeah, which I assume is pretty reputable.
Yeah, it's good company.
Okay, so people are still reading, and it looks like print books are actually doing way better than ebooks and audios. So it looks like there still is a demand for reading books. But what I think is interesting is it's like some of the books that I have now, the more recent ones I've got that have been published in like the last 2 years, at the end of each chapter, they will do a summary with like the key takeaways. So for people like me who sometimes halfway through the chapter, I'm like, I'm not sure if I want to finish the chapter. You can, you know, just quickly skim to the end. So I feel like the long form of just you have to read cohesively from chapter 1 all the way through to chapter 12. Maybe that's changing, and it's now more of being able to just pick up a book and open it and extract information from different sections.
Yeah. Well, I think that's right, especially for business books. You want to be able to skim through it and read targeted elements. There's a guy named Naval Ravikant who I listened to. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast. Anyway, he talks about being very discriminating about how he reads. And he might have a dozen, 15, 20 books open at any time, and he reads until then he goes to the next thing. And if it's really good, he might read it 5 times. And so he's really distilling some of the meanings, but he won't waste his time reading something end to end if it's not worthy of that.
Right. Just to say that he read it.
Right.
Just to get another count on the book.
I think literature and storytelling, fiction books that are long arc stories, they lend themselves to end-to-end reading. But like one of the books I recently read is from Scott Galloway called The Four.
Yeah.
And it talks about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which is Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Google. And you can just read about one of them. You don't have to read all of them. You know, there's some aspect of repeating, but it gives you he does an in-depth look at each one of them and why their business models are going to be disruptive. So you can read 1, 2, 3, or 4. You don't have to read the whole thing. And so it lends itself to that. There's a lot of services out there that'll take business books and distill them down into the Cliff Notes. Blinkist.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, so you get the gist of it. And if you really want to get into it more, you can go back and read that. But most of the time, I think people are reading the Blinkist version of business books.
They are. I think so too.
Yeah.
I think it's just people just don't have the attention span to read.
But I've never met people who regret reading.
That is true.
Think about that. You know, like some of the most informed, smartest people I know read a lot of books. You know, it's like actually one of the things Henry Kissinger always said was that read more. You know, like how do you just read? You got to read a lot. Now, whether it's books or something, you have to constantly be informing yourself with what's happening.
Well, in that book by which you recommended, Nicholas Carr, The Shallows, they talked exactly about, there was a debate in one of the chapters about, people who are in the literary world who are proponents of long form reading, and then some people who said it's actually not practical anymore and you should still be reading, but if you if you're reading short articles, you are actually able to get a wider breadth of information versus one long, like 260-page book. So I don't know. It's interesting, the argument on both sides, but his basic point is the fact that people just no longer have the attention span to do that. And even as a author, he struggles reading long form. Yeah.
When I do if I do a public speech, or say I got a half hour, 40 minutes, maybe even an hour, sometimes it's to speak, you have to sit back and say, all right, I'm speaking in the context of a conference, right? And there's a lot of people there, and you have to, and I always boil it down to, because I'm doing business talks for the most part, and I'm really thinking, like, what are they going to walk away with? Because I'm in the context of many other speakers, many other events and forums for that day, and it's one day and 1 week and 1 month of that person's life.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be up there for an hour, half an hour. I want to leave them with maybe just one idea, maybe two, and on a home run it'd be 3 ideas.
I was just about to say, like, when you were talking about reading articles and reading books, like at the end of, when you finish both, what do you ultimately take away from, both of them? Like from a book, it's not like because I read 200 pages, I'm going to retain more stuff from the book. Usually it's just a couple.
It's an idea. It's an idea
too, right? And you can get that same thing from the articles, like just an idea or two.
So I think if Blinkist attempts to do that, attempts to distill it down to the 1 or 2 ideas that you're going to get.
Right.
So, and I'm separating that from fiction reading, which is a form of entertainment, immersive entertainment.
Right.
But if you're reading a business book, you're trying to get ideas, and I would say, when I think of the book we just came out with, the idea is that software is replacing knowledge workers in the same way that automation affected the Rust Belt through mechanization and automation. And as this happens, it's going to happen very fast because it's software.
Right.
Yeah.
And people are not ready for it. So as machines in the Rust Belt took over muscle work, software is replacing brain work.
Right. So you get that, you can read that from, Blinkist or whatever, and you'll be like, oh, yeah, whatever. But I guess the part from reading the book is you have all the examples and you have all of the extra that actually makes it set in a little bit more, provides more context for these ideas.
Also, to the extent the idea is something you don't naturally agree with,
exactly. Yeah.
It helps you distill it down to, I either I'm on board or I'm on board with a version of it. And so the rest of the book helps support the idea.
Right.
And I think with good narrative storytelling, you help the person retain the idea versus saying, I got the idea, I'm on to the next thing. They'll forget. So you want to be memorable.
Not just that, also makes them just think about new ideas, right? Like if you're offering all of this, maybe they can come up with their own theories or mindsets on what they believe based on all the evidence you've provided.
Yeah.
So in like when I do in speeches, and we try to do the same thing in the book, I use a lot of metaphors to explain complex ideas. The metaphors help people personalize through a shared experience in the use of it. So metaphors are a literary tool that uses a little bit of words, like this is like being at the beach. So when I say being at the beach, I'm tapping into our collective experience of being at the beach, which is much more immersive than 15 words of saying it.
Right.
So it's a literary tool to drive that shared experience and then to set a concept into that. So you use a lot of that in the technology consulting and then in the book where we're trying to put some very complex subjects out there.
Right.
And so far we've gotten some good feedback on things aspects that people have written. We know the content's pretty good because we use it in the consulting world, and we know our clients and the people we interact with like it.
Right.
By the way, random question: can you access books on a VR headset? Like, could you just sit back in a reclining chair with a VR headset on and
I haven't seen an app that does that. I've been lately playing around with the Oculus, and the Oculus doesn't have a lot of content out there. But last year, TJ and I spent a lot of time talking about how books are ripe for using technology to basically experience them in a way where you're not necessarily looking at just the words back to back. So having the AI read the book and distill it down and understand what you're reading about, so it can add sound effects. It could add context in terms of the setting, and actually some of the dialogue. They could have avatars going. So that's some of that's way future out.
Yeah.
But the notion of like Bandersnatch on Netflix was an interactive TV show that allowed the technology where you could actually decide which way the plot goes. So they filmed 10 hours of the show.
Yeah.
And it's about a 90-minute experience, depending on which choices you make during the show. You could do the same thing with the book and create interactive experiences so that it's more of an immersive feel, but use it for storytelling and use the platform for that. But the book is still the gold standard for long form content.
Yeah, it is.
There are some new things. Did you ever hear the Spritz?
No.
Spritz app? I remember seeing this like a couple years ago, and it's like basically like one word would pop up, and then the next word would pop up, and it would just go through it, but you can set it at a certain rate of like, oh, I want to read 200 words per minute or 300 words per minute. And I was reading at like 5 times what I normally read at a normal pace. And apparently they've proved, done some studies and stuff, you retain more because you're more attentive to it because it just blinks and it goes. The next word just comes up.
Putting it together as a sentence? Because you're still like...
We have to try it. We have to try it out after this. So they have the app and everything, and we'll see what you think of it. It's an app for
speed reading?
It's for speed reading, right? But it's in general reading too, because they say you'll retain more.
But are you still formulating cohesive sentences? Because is it just taking the words from a book and just flashing up the...
It's doing it sentence by sentence, right?
But I wonder, like, is your mind then stringing that sentence together subconsciously? I don't know. Okay.
I get what it's doing.
I get what it's doing.
Okay, so you could try it out right now. Go to spritz.com.
Rather than you look, it's forcing it to you. So it's doing the eye motion back and forth. So it just does it. But it's I tend to read, like, especially reading business stuff. I'm skimming. I'm not reading everything word for word.
Right.
Yeah. So we can play around this offline because this will take a while.
Oh, there it goes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm reading faster than that, so
it'll keep going. You can adjust it, and it'll go up to 1,000. It'll go up to But you're retaining what it's saying as long as you're focusing on it. You're seeing this though.
Yeah, I see it, but I don't know if I like it.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like
I don't like it because I don't like it.
Okay.
Wait, just because it doesn't...
I don't like it.
It's just because it doesn't feel natural, right?
No, because it feels like they're doing a brain hack.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a little bit of a, like I.
So I'll say this: it improved my focus. That's for sure, because I was just like, I need to be paying attention to this because it's coming fast and it's going. So for me, at least, I was like, oh, this is cool. I wish I could just copy and paste like an article into here and then have that spritz at me.
Yeah. So I think if you think about like sort of the future here, words in linear form, written out, is a inefficient way to get information into your brain.
Yeah.
Right.
But it is historical, and we're used to it, and we've trained ourselves to be good at reading. Some people are better than others, but there are more ways to do it. So, like I used before, the metaphor is a literary tool to jam more information into the words than are actually there.
And more complicated.
More complex. But then you get into film and visual and sound and smell.
More senses.
And more senses, and I can now communicate even more complex ideas. But not everybody's good at it, right? So a lot of the, visual stuff will tend to use parlor tricks, to get your attention. A scantily clad woman, or an explosion, or some thing that's hitting your hippocampus at the base, but it's not necessarily complex or rich in that way. I think there is an opportunity to mix the words with a visual aspect to it. So there was a video game series that came out years ago called Myst, and it was written. It was set up by these two young guys, and it had long form book mixed with interactive video and sound and puzzles, and it was really immersive. It was a cutting edge game, and they have a few games that are still out on some of the current platforms, but at the time they really were pushing the envelope on immersive video games, walkthroughs, adventure games. It was pretty wild, but that used everything, and they had companion books that go with it. It was a very interesting to me dynamic about how you can take books in their current form and bring them into sort of the new world. Mm-hmm. And in the business world, I do think the Blinkist form of giving you the outline at the end of the chapter or a summary of the book that you can have, so that if you want to go deeper, you can, but allows you to throttle it based and still get the gist of the story.
Yeah,
right.
Really good tool.
Yeah. So, Karen, you and I talked about focusing, getting a book talked about on this topic around the notion that experience, economy, the realization that people are going to start valuing their time differently.
Yeah.
And spending money as a result of that realization. Mm-hmm. So this concept of I'm going to run out of time before I run out of money older people, so let's say over 50, over 60, you pick a time frame, they know that.
Yeah, I think it's a very prevalent.
It's an obvious algebra to them. I'm going to run out of time before I run out of money.
Yeah.
But they don't have the confidence or the outlets to spend the money in a way that changes that.
Yeah.
And so as we move that algebra down to people who are confident that they can actually take advantage of spending the money to enhance their time, it's going to shift the things that we sell in our economy today. So at some level, even we argue that millennials are going to go do that. They're going to start to invest more in time than they do in things and the accumulation of wealth, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I got a big pile of money. I don't need a bigger pile, right? I need to enjoy the pile I have, right?
Yeah.
And people are worried, what if my pile goes away? A lot of things can happen. More likely to die with the pile.
Yeah.
Right, which is not very good. So I think a book that describes that for people and gives them some constructive outlets in terms of how to change the way that they're living.
Right.
Yeah.
I look finding that balance between
So I look at even things like go on vacation somewhere, and you have to recognize that if you're going to be a world traveler, not quite as worldly as Sean, but if you're a normal, you're going to go to a place, and you might not go there again, right? Because you're going to mix it up, and so it might be your only time there.
Yeah.
You really want to make it great.
Yeah.
And so I've hired local guides. You spend some money for that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes as much as getting there, you might spend on guides and experiences like that, but it makes the whole trip so much more memorable.
Right.
And if you say, "Oh, next time we'll do that," or "Next time we'll do that," well, no, this time, do it this time.
Right.
And then next time we'll talk about what we did last time. So, I just think we have a couple other books contemplated behind this. We want to finish this experience of this book because we literally, just before we started recording, you ordered the first set of books for us to take up to Boston, right?
Yep, first 10. It's going to be shipped to Boston.
Yeah, and then we have to figure out this afternoon how we're going to order the rest of them and what else we're going to go do.
Right.
And this will go live on Amazon when?
She hasn't said.
Tomorrow or Saturday.
Okay.
Tomorrow, I think that's our day.
Hopefully tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm assuming most people who are going to buy this book are going to do it through Kindle.
That'd be interesting to see as well, because we're doing a couple of different social media campaigns.
Yeah.
And so we'll be able to track, like, how are people purchasing the book or how are they getting to it.
We got a digital update email. she said, hopefully we'll have the finished files in hand tomorrow.
Good. Okay.
Awesome.
So that'll be great, and then we'll get a blast out to some of the folks. In fact, it just came in. Successful order. Awesome. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Again, it's a little bit of a relief. I'm hoping that this does as is contemplated, which helps drive some deeper, better engagements with our client base, with our people we're talking to in the market. And also helps people understand that the world is changing and people need to be open to new ideas. Now, we've come across people we work with in the consulting world who they want tomorrow to look like yesterday.
Yes, a lot.
And they are working hard to preserve that. And I understand what they're doing. I can relate to what they're doing, and they're just not, they're wrong. And they see us as a threat to that, but I want to break it down and show them what the opportunities are to drive these changes, and hopefully this book will help do that. So
one last question.
Yeah.
When you go on to the news, are you going to be wearing that shirt or different pattern?
Well, the thing is, the studio here, it's in the basement of my house here, so it's this is what I like to wear. So to be honest with you, I if a good day is when I can wear shorts, deck shoes, and a shirt like this. When I have to put on a shirt and tie, I haven't worn a tie in a while. I just don't like to do that. So this is what if I were going out and hanging out at the I visited my cousin down in Florida, and he lives in Jupiter. We went to one of my favorite bars, and there's the Square Grouper.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wear the Square Grouper T-shirts around, but if I'm there, I'm dressed just like this. Like I'm just walking around, hanging out, and puts me in a relaxing mode.
It's like Experience This, brought to you by Tommy Bahama.
Yeah, I have. You can't imagine the breadth of my Tommy Bahama collection.
We need to send them a book.
Yeah. But you should get sponsored by them.
Yeah, I have so many of those shirts. They're actually not good for the really hot weather because they're too warm. But right now, it's a great time to wear those. And so, yeah, I have, I don't know, 30 or 40 of them. They're not cheap, but they're good shirts, though.
We'll look into them sponsoring this podcast.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, thanks, everybody. We're going to go upstairs and meet with the team and have a little celebration and get some lunch. And thanks to the two of you for helping us get this across the goal line here.
Yeah, of course.
To me, the book completion is me handing a copy of my book to my mom and dad.
Yeah.
Almost there.
Almost there. So
almost there. Yeah.
That makes it real.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes it real for me.
Yes.
And so that to me, and then we have a lot of things we're gonna go do, and I'm just looking forward to seeing the rest of this journey through.
Same.
Thank you.
Great.
Tom Young,
excited.
author.
Yeah, thanks. All right,
See you guys. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Karen, I think you were supposed to say that.
Yeah, thanks. I'll take it from here.
All right, well, we got to do this is the new Outcast.
Oh, the outro. The outro.
I think Outcast is a new word. All right, outro. We're doing a new outro. We got to cover a few things.
All right.
One is what? Subscription.
Do you subscribe through?
We want people to subscribe to this, not just listen to it occasionally.
Okay, yeah. Check us out.
The second thing is nothing's better than what? A 5-star rating.
Always 5 stars.
Got to give us the 5 stars because we get better search outcomes. Mm-hmm. And the last thing is comments.
We need those.
Yeah,
we need your feedback.
We want to know what people are thinking. So you can check us out. The best way to do it if you're not sure, some people don't know how to do it. Go to our website. You can check it out. We'll have a full set of instructions. So whatever app you're using. Most people use, what do you use, Karen?
I use Spotify.
You do?
Yeah.
So we have Spotify, we have iTunes, YouTube. There's a whole bunch. Whatever you use, we have it. And if we don't have it, let us know, and we'll try to figure out how to get it.
We can send you a paper-based instruction.
Actually, we do have paper-based instructions, even though that's a fun inside joke to our team. So anyway, Thanks for listening, and check us out on our next shows.
Thanks. See ya.